Saturday, 1 August 2026. 3 Asia-Pacific AI stories before your first coffee. Taipei's newly launched Taiwan Open Source Foundation is channeling NT $300 million in private funding over 3 years, not into chips or compute, but into placing Taiwanese engineers inside the governance structures of major international open source projects, including VLLM, Kubernetes, Ray, Apache Kafka, and Apache Airflow. The foundation, which held its launch on 30 July, is chaired by Tsai Chi-yen, Chief Information Officer of Taiwan Mobile, with Wistron's Chief Technology Officer, Shen Qingyoff, serving as a director. Its flagship fellowship targets 10 to 15 projects, paying engineers NT $20,000 a month, plus mentorship, with the goal of building a 1,000-person local open source community. Why it matters? Most Asian sovereign AI programs compete on silicon, models, or compute capacity. Taiwan is buying something harder to replicate: governance standing inside the infrastructure stack that every AI builder depends on. Engineers with commit authority and steering committee seats in projects like VLLM and Ray shape roadmap decisions that ripple across cloud providers and model-serving pipelines globally. For Taiwan, this creates a soft power layer that complements its existing hardware dominance. Capital allocators should watch whether the fellowship pipeline produces maintainers who stick, because sustained upstream influence is what converts funding into lasting leverage. The second-order effect worth tracking is whether other Asian governments, particularly South Korea and Japan, respond with their own open-source governance plays. So, Jakarta's Ministry of Creative Economy is drafting AI guidelines for all 21 of its creative subsectors, covering adoption readiness, regulatory sandboxes, and digital literacy, even as the 2 presidential regulations meant to sit above them remain unsigned. Minister Teoku Rifki Harsha confirmed on 29 July that implementation across film, music, gaming, design, and other verticals cannot begin until the National AI Roadmap and the AI Ethics and Safety Regulation are issued, now pushed to end of 2026. Indonesia currently operates roughly 196 data center facilities, totaling about 600 megawatts, with a 1.65 gigawatt target by year-end. Why it matters? Indonesia is building the subsector playbook before the national rulebook exists, which creates a sequencing risk for every operator planning AI deployments in the creative economy. Studios, game developers, and ad tech firms eyeing Jakarta's 280 million person consumer base cannot lock in compliance frameworks when the top-level regulations keep slipping. Capital allocators watching the Firmus and Day 1 360-megawatt NVIDIA campus in Batam due live in Q1 2027 should note that compute infrastructure is outpacing governance infrastructure by at least a year. The second-order effect to track: if the presidential regulations slip past 2026, ministry-level guidelines across multiple sectors may fragment into incompatible local standards, raising costs for platforms operating across Indonesian verticals. Now, OpenAI slashed the price of its cheapest frontier tier by 80% on 30 July, dropping GPT 5.6 Luna to 20 cents per million input tokens and $1.20 per million output tokens, while cutting Terra by 20% and leaving the sole flagship unchanged. The move lands just as Asian enterprises and government buyers are locked into annual procurement commitments, signed in the first half of the year against the old price grid. Meanwhile, Chinese origin models now account for at least 30% of US enterprise token volume on OpenRouter every week since early February, with DeepSeek alone holding 17.6% and Alibaba's QN at 13.9%. Why it matters? Every Asian buyer that signed an annual token commitment before this cut is now paying above a list price that has fallen by 4/5, which means renegotiation pressure will cascade through procurement offices from Singapore to Seoul in the coming quarter. Capital allocators backing sovereign model programs that justified themselves primarily on unit cost rather than language coverage, jurisdictional control, or data residency have lost their core business case overnight. Builders routing through aggregators like OpenRouter now face a genuine arbitrage question. Western frontier models are suddenly price competitive with Chinese alternatives that had been winning on cost alone. The second-order effect to track is whether this triggers a wave of mid-contract renegotiations across Asian telcos and system integrators, or whether vendors hold the line and let contracts roll off naturally. That is your AI in Asia briefing for today. Stay sharp, build well, see you tomorrow.